Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Today we're talking about one of the sectors I've had a childhood affiliation or affection for just for years and always want to go back to it. And that is, as you'll have heard on previous ones that I've done in this sector, is the rail sector. Who doesn't like a train? But we're going to be very specific, and that is talking about neurodiversity in the rail sector and really getting hopefully a thorough understanding of how it impacts the people within which are in that sector. So to help us navigate, and I'm sorry about this, stay on track, we've got Kimberley Harding joining us from the Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education at the University of Birmingham. So Kimberley, welcome and thank you, and apologise for the pun in advance.
I can't say I've heard too dissimilar previously. There's a lot of on-track points that have been made, but thank you so much for having me. It's great to be able to share some of our research. That's what we've done.
I can't believe that wasn't an original joke when talking about rail.
We get them a fair amount. It's quite good. I off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone better. So congratulations. I'll let you have that.
Very kind. So for everybody watching and listening, can you give us a bit of an insight into who you are? What do you do and why here?
Oh, well, so hi, my name's Kimberley Harding. I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham at the Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education, which we put as a little acronym as BCRRE, based in the University of Birmingham, and it's the headquarters for the United Kingdom Railway Research and Innovation Network. Another little acronym. My background, I did my first degree in design and manufacture engineering at the University of Nottingham. We then had that really small pandemic. I don't know if you remember the
really?
Tiny, yeah, it was. And full lockdown. I'd finished my engineering degree and panicked. And I was at the time doing my dissertation topic on evacuating people with reduced mobility from the train height, so where you walk to the ballast level, which is about a 6-foot drop, which is really, really difficult. It's a hard task to do. And I got asked to do a master's degree, and I thought, well, fine, we're in lockdown. So I did that. Got a master's degree in railway systems engineering and integration from the University of Birmingham. And then my supervisor, Professor Clive Roberts, shone this really cool idea of a PhD proposal to me, and I just sort of snapped it up, and I'm still here, and I love it. So I've been in the railway industry since I was 15. My dad runs a system safety consultancy in rail. I was never going to not be in rail. He's got a railway carriage in his back garden. I'm a daughter of a railway fanatic. I can't ever leave, but I've loved it. It's been great. So yeah, I've been in the railway industry since I was 15, doing everything and anything that I can, because I'm a little bit infatuated with how everything works. And at the moment, I'm focusing on finishing my PhD, which is in neurodiversity and neuro-inclusive design strategies for implementation in the railway. Put simply, how can we make the railway industry better for people who are neurodiverse? And then on the side, doing bits of projects. So teaching internationally about systems engineering and ergonomics and inclusion. So we teach in Dubai. We've got a campus over there, as you do. Teach in the UK as well, a little bit less exciting than being in Birmingham. And then we also do some outreach programs as well about systems engineering and ergonomics. And then a bit of consultancy stuff on the side. So hopefully that's a short run through of all the things I've done.
And I thoroughly recommend that if you on LinkedIn to go and look at some of the stuff that Kimberley posts, because this whole idea of just where you're at this week. Oh, sorry, I can't respond right now. I'm in Dubai. I'm here. I'm there. It's like I'm stuck in the middle of Wales, or I'm in the north of England, or wherever. I don't get to do that sort of cool sort of travel. So yeah, very jealous. But I'm really intrigued by the fact that you've had a railway carriage from when you were growing up. How did you manage to not just stay in there and play in the railway carriage all the time, or did you?
I did a lot. My parents bought a little house in West Sussex, and when they bought the house, they had no idea really it was a railway carriage. It was sort of cladded up. It looked like a potting shed. And it wasn't really until my very tall uncle hit his head on the roof that it said each seat to hold 5 persons. We were like, since when does a potting shed have seats? No, it's an 1874 London to Brighton South Coast railway carriage. Still has got his original emblems and everything on it, all its logos. It's really cool. So it started off as a little potting shed and then became me and my dad's project upcycling and making it. So it's his office now, which is really cool. So he's got his own consultancy, and he works in there. And the background is his train carriage, which is I'm a little jealous of. But yeah, so I was never going to be able to stray away from it, which I'm not upset about.
So with that influence into, I guess, rail engineering and things like that, how did you find out about human factors? How did the ergonomics message get to you?
Well, again, to be honest, it's my dad. So he's a system safety engineer. And what I found really interesting was all of these issues were human focused. There were loads of things that were going wrong because of either the sort of mismatch between humans and systems or humans and general interface or whatever it might have been. So for me, it became this sort of small infatuation of, well, why can't we just make things better for the people? I did ergonomics as part of my undergraduate degree. It wasn't an undergraduate degree in ergonomics, but it had some sections and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. And then it just sort of spiraled. We did it for my master's and now I teach it. And I know looking back, I think it's a really, really, it's really fun. I really like it. Trying to make things work and look cool is great.
I know that you recently got chartered through the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, so congratulations and well done. I also hear a rumor that you might be the youngest person to have gained chartership. Supposedly,
yeah, which is incredible. That's really cool. I got my chartership 2 months ago. So I'm a proper qualified ergonomist, which is terrifying because they actually trust me with things. No, it's really cool. It was a long process. It was collating all the bits that I had done in ergonomics sort of since I was 15, so 10, 11 years ago, pulling it all together and making sure that I actually sort of abided by everything that was already on the list. But it was really good. I had within the university, my friends and my colleagues were able to help support everything going forward and give me incredible recommendations. So it's really cool, really, really cool. I'm really happy to be part of the institute. So
awesome. The journey of the dreaded logbook, and but no, congratulations, that's been brilliant. So
thank you very much.
Where do you in the grand scheme of things, what do you think your career path holds for the future? Have you had any thoughts about where you want to go, what you want to do?
Yeah, I think for me, I really, really want to make a difference. I really want to try and use the bits that I know, which, I'm 25, I don't know a great deal of things, but I do really want to get everything that I know, collate it and create a team of people who are able to research and collaborate on how we can make, in my instance, the rail industry more inclusive, accessible, and look at something that we've sort of coined as holistic ergonomics. So looking at not from the 5th to the 95th percentile, but the 100%, everybody, but also manifesting that into cognitive ergonomics and understanding people aren't just these blobs, they're not just sizes. They actually have feelings and emotions, and the cognition, overload and underload of mental strain and all that lovely stuff. How can we actually understand people as they are? No less, how can we put them in a rail setting and make sure that what they're doing and what they're experiencing is the best that they can have, and encourage people to want to do that. So for me, I guess I see myself in the future as somebody who can oversee and get my hands dirty on loads of research projects that are in and around inclusive design and inclusive ergonomics, because that's really what my passion is.
Cool. Okay, right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk a bit more in depth about neurodiversity in rail. So we'll be back right after this.
You're listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. We're talking about neurodiversity in rail with Kimberley Harding. So, Kimberley, you've organised the last 2, I believe, neurodiversity in rail conferences based in Birmingham. Why do you think there's a need for it, and why take on such a massive challenge as organising something like that?
It was originally, it wasn't my idea. My initial PhD structure was inclusive design, not neurodiversity. But a colleague of mine, Professor Felix Schmid, and the IMechE, so the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, had sort of come up with this idea of what neurodiversity is, and it's it was sort of in its infancy in rail back then. And it just spiraled. It became this really cool idea. My PhD is now manifested into neurodiversity and neuroinclusion. And I thought that there's so many people working in rail who may be working sort of slightly siloed in neurodiversity, creating a space that we can collate and understand what people are doing and learn what people are doing well and maybe not so well, and would make things better. Yeah, it did really, really well. We had 111 people attend, and over 30 different organizations, ranging from I think RSSB were there, Network Rail were there, and then we had some international universities. So some people in Australia joined us, which was really, really nice. So it was really good. It was really enjoyable, really enjoyed it. And I think there's such a need for really intrinsically understanding what neurodiversity is and the necessity for change in the rail sector. So yeah, it was really good.
So with the idea about looking at neurodiversity in rail, is that just because you're interested in both of these topics, or is there any sort of greater propensity in rail for people who are neurodiverse?
I don't think there's necessarily a greater propensity, more that people who travel should have the ability to travel regardless of anything, really, gender, age, sexuality, it doesn't matter. I think for me, it was a case that they were sort of, I work in the rail industry and I can see this necessity for change, but I do think there's a sort of at least a nationwide change necessary. So there's lots of things that are moving in the right direction, and I think rail industry are really trying to focus on what we can do better. And we speaking generally, we are very good at looking after people. We're very safe, and we make sure that everybody tries to get home safely every day. But actually just getting that further broadness into inclusion and neuroinclusion is really important. So yes and no. I think for the rail sector in particular, we see loads of people, I've not got a number to it because I'm not too sure how many, move through the rail industry every day. Is I'm going to guess millions and billions, I don't know. Of those, there will be a percentage who are neurodiverse. Actually, what can we do to make that better? What can we do to make sure that everyone's comfortable, happy, and is able to use the rail industry and the rail sector in a way that makes them feel included and comfortable, basically?
So I guess from that perspective then, my gut instinct, I guess, is from my practice background, is I'm thinking about drivers, I'm thinking about the staff, and I'm thinking about the logistics of it. But actually, what you've alluded to there is the passengers as well, is the people who actually use it as that piece, and it's not just about one particular user group. And so does that mean that you're trying to lend itself to make it more, it's more, I guess, almost from the UX domain, about it being more friendly, more engaging, and it's not just about that, I guess, almost traditional HF approach of making sure that it's just safe and positive? So you have to bring in that whole user experience.
Yeah, there's lots of different things that we need to consider. So my doctoral research looks at passengers and passenger experience. So that's sort of where my research is taken. But there is a whole other section of looking at drivers and staff, not only who are front and center at stations, but people who work in office spaces as well, behind the scenes, or maybe not so much behind the scenes, but people who are able to sort of look after everything and make sure everything runs. There's lots of different things to consider. There's people who have neurodiverse children, so the parents of, actually, what can we do to make sure that the parents are looked after and the children are comfortable too? There's loads and loads of things to consider. But yeah, my area of expertise is in passenger experience and neurodiversity.
So what's your view then on the way that we as society is engaging with neurodiversity at the moment? Because it's still a new topic. Some people, perhaps of older generations, perceive it as a bit woke, as a bit, we never had that in my day type of thing. And certainly I know from our experiences within our family, we're learning a lot about it really quite rapidly. How do you feel about the way that we're engaging with it as a society?
I think we're getting there. I think everything is moving in the right direction. I think you're right. There is this sort of culture that it's almost name tagging people for being different. And I think that's not, obviously it's not true. So neurodiversity is a construct of biodiversity. It's just how people have evolved and changed. There's nothing odd about it. It's It's different from, I like the colour purple, you might like the colour blue. It's just how your brain is wired and what goes on. So for society, I think there's an intrinsic need to shift. There's a huge issue with sort of the minority, so BAME being underrepresented and underdiagnosed, women being underdiagnosed and underrepresented, and actually understanding that it's hereditary. So in the NHS in the UK, if your children are trying to go through a diagnosis through the NHS, you have to get a parent signature. Actually, if you're not close with your parents, or because they think it's normal or whatever and don't require a diagnosis, you might not get that. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I think there's definitely more of an understanding of what it is and what it could be. But I do think there are those they're the groups of people who think it's sort of a fad, or it's coming in and it'll go again. And there are people who think that it's not me, it couldn't be like me at all. But actually, everybody has some sort of neurodiversity. It's a whole spectrum of different attributes that contribute to your social makeup. So, there's not really, everybody sort of falls into a category in some area. It's not so siloed as you have autism, you have ADHD. Actually, you might have attributes of both. It's taken into consideration everybody. And I think we're moving there. To cut a long story short, I think we're moving there. I think we're getting in the right direction. I do think there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that we get everybody there's a 4-year waiting list at the NHS at the moment to get diagnosed. Women and the BAME community being underdiagnosed, huge issues. But I do think we are slowly getting there.
There is, now this could either just be down to the way that the algorithm has got me on TikTok now, but the more and more that people are willing to talk about both neurodiversity and mental health, because, and I'll bring in them both there, it feels like we've had an awakening of actually your mental faculties is something that is not just a given. People can be and are different, and so there could be an argument, which I've seen laid out, that actually, which goes similar to what you just said, that actually we've all got attributes one way or another, and actually it could be that we're all in the same way that people can be different heights, different weights, different fitness levels. You have different mental characteristics that make you, that neurodiversity is a good thing. And we sort of have that, where I'm more of a morning active person and being able to do that sort of thing. I'm happy to do chats and things like that. Whereas Amanda, my better half, would rather die than pick up the phone and talk to somebody. She's happy to do things over text, etc. They're all different little aspects of all of this, and maybe just encouraging us to look at people in a different way. Some would then go back to Victorian schooling and things like that, but I suggest that's not for today. So let's go back to the conference then. In what you've done, you've held it a few weeks ago now, also slightly longer than that. In fact, when this goes out, it'll be even longer than that. What do you feel you achieved this year? What was the big takeaways?
We launched RINC, the Rail Industry Neuro-Inclusive Committee, which was really cool. We really wanted a hub where anybody and everybody can contribute in any way that they can. So I worked really closely with a couple of colleagues of mine to launch this. Although we launched it, it's being run by 2 directors who are looking after everything. And basically what we're doing is we're bringing everything together. So some expertise that might do really well from Avanti West Coast, for example, can then be pulled into Southern Rail, for example. It's sort of this understanding of having this data set and these ideas that we can pull together. And that, we launched that. That was really, really good. And the other things that we did were kind of pull everything together. So we went everything from the passenger perspective of railways and discussed. We had Dr. Emma Langman, who is fantastic, absolutely incredible, very openly neurodiverse, and speaks about how when she was diagnosed, she felt she's ADHD and autistic. And for her, this sort of comorbidity, which is the idea of having both conditions together, was really conflicting and really difficult. And she gave us a really incredible presentation about what it's like for her. So it really hit home then for the people who participated to hear firsthand what it's like, but also second to that, to have then the staff perspectives. What can we do more in, an office environment for people who work in an office, funny enough, in the rail industry, to make things better? And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. What might work for somebody might not for another. So you've got, I mentioned about a spectrum, but it's more like a spider diagram of these characteristics. So what might work well for one autistic person is not necessarily going to work well for another autistic person. Someone who I met recently said, if you meet one Scotsman, you've not met everybody who's Scottish, which I thought was quite a good analogy. But it's very true. I mean, I think there's almost like a blanket policy. If you have autism, then perhaps having headphones might help, and it might, but it also might not.
Yeah.
And I think what we sort of manifested from the conference was this sort of understanding of individuality and neurodiversity. It's the idea that what works for one person might not for another, and that's fine, but we should contribute to making sure that everybody is looked after, and having that two-way communication is really, really important.
So, and this is a slightly left field question, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on diagnosis at the moment. Yep. As you've mentioned, there is long waiting lists for people to try and get diagnosed. How important do you think it is now to be diagnosed? I mean, I think, as we mentioned before, like my TikTok stream is full of characteristics, and I'm sitting there going, "No, hold on, that's me. Oh, that's me as well. Oh, that's me. Yes, that's me as well. Oh, not that one. Oh, yes, that one." And you go through that, and so I'm fairly sure I share a lot of traits, shall we say, but I kind of don't see the value in me getting diagnosed because I'm out of school. What difference is it going to make to me? But that's obviously my perception problem. Yeah. How important do you think in this day and age it is to get a diagnosis?
There are positive negatives of both. I think there are some countries that still won't let you into the country if you are autistic.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, New Zealand, Australia are really, really poor for letting you in to have citizenship if you're autistic.
Wow.
Which is very, very old-fashioned. So there's negatives to getting diagnosed because you have it on paper that this is your diagnosis. But there are positives too. I think I don't see the weighting either side. I think if you feel like you identify with certain attributes, then you do. I'm not one to say, no, you don't tick all the list, therefore you're not. I think it's very open, and it's a personal opinion of what you feel you resonate with the most. I don't think there's so much weighting on the diagnoses, but I do think if you want to get more support, often industry is a little bit more accepting if you have got that formal diagnosis, which I don't think that should be the case. But yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both. Not getting diagnosed, often it's harder for you to sort of, if you've identified as being somebody who's neurodiverse, to find some coping strategies that might help you. Whereas if you have that formal diagnosis, you might have the NHS's support to find counselling or strategic approaches to sort of help with social anxiety or whatever it is that your neurodiversity manifests as. So yeah, for me personally, I don't think a diagnosis is necessary. It makes the researchy part hard because people who self-diagnose may not follow the same stream of people who are formally diagnosed. But it's not to say they're not neurodiverse. So it's in society, I really don't see the weighting for me is neither here or nor there. I think if you are diagnosed, fantastic, well done for getting through the system because it's really difficult to do. But if you're not and you identify as somebody who has neurodiverse conditions, absolutely fine. What can we do to sort of support and help with anything that you're doing, particularly in my case in the rail industry, but further afield, what can we do to make things better?
I guess it's worth saying that there is a slight nuance there between if you're a younger person, say a student, whatever level, if you do get diagnosed, there is obviously lots of support now in place that if you go to university, you can get extra, you can use computers and get computing support and et cetera. I guess I was going to say grown up. I could never be accused of being a grown up. And even then that's stretching. There is still that sort of stigma out there to a certain extent, but there is a lot more, people become a lot more accepting and actually, are willing to realize not only the compensations you have to make, but actually for me, the value.
Massively
because
so.
understanding how different people are affected, where they're at on their neurodiversity spider diagram, you can actually sit there and go, well, actually, that means that you're probably really good at this. There you go, do more of. So for the rail sector itself, how do you think we become more neuro-inclusive? That's a word I made up, by the way. I just thought.
No, it's fine. We've coined neuro-inclusive too, so that's fine. Don't worry. I think there's loads to do. From a passenger perspective, I think there are some companies that do it really, really well, and that's through either quiet spaces. So you might go to a railway station and there's a quiet pod that you can sit and just basically desensitize from the world. They can be really, really good. The issue is that there's no uniformity because it's not mandatory. So Avanti might have one. I'm just picking names from the top of my head, but they might have one, and then Southern might have one. And as a traveling autistic person, you don't know that they're the same.
Right.
So you might have some attributes that Southern had, which were fantastic. Really, really nice, calming environment, no background noise, whatever. And Avanti might not have that, or vice versa. That can make it quite sort of disconcerting to use. They're also usually quite hidden away, which is nice for the sort of sensory removal, but not great for actually trying to find where it is. So there's things like that. I think there's just a general understanding that a lot of what we do in the rail industry is from the Victorian era. It's really old, fantastic. It's the stuff we do is really, really good. I'm not shaming anything that we've done to date, but actually there's a lot of stuff that needs moving. So, for example, we did the exhibition at the Neurodiversity conference called Tickets, Please, which is a small piece that we try to visualize what neurodiversity is from a person who is not neurodiverse. So we worked with a small team of different people who had different neurodivergent conditions and pulled out what those tickets look like. So for dyslexia, it might be words or letters moving. For people who are autistic, it might actually be a case of, I can't lose this ticket. That seemed to be sort of the resounding bits that came back, is I can't use this ticket. It's really important I don't use this ticket. And then ADHD is, I've lost this ticket. What do I do? It's gone. I need to get another one. But actually, it's just a very small part of a passenger's journey. There's so much more to consider, just from the passenger side alone. So there's a lot, and it's really nice that since the Neurodiversity conference, I've had a lot of outreach for how we can do that better, wanting to make a bottom-up human factors style piece first, which is great because it's usually firefighting. So getting those in first, getting the personas and the design specifications right first means that the rest falls in place so nicely. And it's great that, if anything, from the Neurodiversity conference, that has been a really good thing. Loads of communications with lots of different people from different industries, and from within the university and external universities too, about what we can do, because there's so many ideas. And it's great. It's really good, but there's a lot to do. There's a reason it's a PhD. Unfortunately, it won't just be my research will get so far, but it really won't do the brunt of everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, it sounds like there needs to be almost a revolution in design for us as well. Where, we have been doing a lot of work in how do you make sure things like we factor in things like color blindness in our HCI designs, etc., etc. This sounds like it's another facet of that, where if we could delve into what are some of those triggers for neurodiversity, that we could actually try and iron out right at the beginning, right? So it's not even a problem to begin with. Would be a really good thing to do, but that sounds like yet another PhD in a mammoth.
Well, that is more or less my PhD. So if you give me a year, I'll have your really nice long document you can read about what we can do and how we can do it better. But yeah, I'm trying to, at the moment, pull apart the entire way that you design railway infrastructure to see where we can slot in neuro-inclusive thinking for passengers. Much easier said than done, because different sectors do different bits in different ways. But actually, a lot of it comes down to just really understanding the people first. It's a long process, but yeah. If you wait a year, I'll give you a really nice 100,000 word document that you can read if you really want to.
So in 12 months' time, we're going to have another episode on here, and you're going. I love it.
Hopefully, if I can get it published, yeah, it's fine.
So you mentioned different sectors do different things. How do we? Obviously, you're leading the way with neurodiversity in rail, and great that's been thought of. I'm not sure that maybe other sectors are thinking of this in such a forward-thinking way, being at the front of it. How do we potentially take what you're doing into other sectors and use that as encouragement or guidance?
We've got a lot of what we do is very adaptable. We're at the end of the day, we're working with people, not infrastructure. Although I am trying to implement this into how rail do industry, there's no reason that the trials and the successes, or rather or not the successes, wherever which way it goes, can't be then implemented into things like the healthcare or the Ministry of Defence or any other sector. As long as there's people, and as long as people are neurodiverse, which is the case, can just be trialed and adapted. So a lot of what I want to do is my thesis and my doctoral research is just a stepping stone. It's almost a how-to guide of what we should be doing. Mine applies to the rail industry. If you take out the first chapter, it's really intrinsically thinking about who these people are, who are the people who you're working with or for or around, and what do they need, and then what can we do to do that better. So I think you're right. I think the rail industry are doing incredibly well to sort of be where they are now in terms of the neuro-inclusive journey. I think they're doing incredibly well. But there is a lot of adaptability, and I think tailoring that and moving it into other sectors is much easier than it might first seem. I think the only difference would be somebody who was very knowledgeable in that domain, so that we're not using rail ideology into perhaps the NHS, where it doesn't quite match perfect. I don't know. I don't work in the NHS, but having someone that's able to sort of fill in the gaps from our knowledge to their knowledge, but still use the trials that we've been doing and everything. I say trials, it's not trials. The research that we've been doing to pull into what they do. There's no reason we couldn't do it. As long as there's people, in my opinion, there's the adaptability to move forward.
So as a final question in this piece then, not often we bring politics into these podcasts, but also we've had a change of government now. We've now got a Labour government, for those of you who missed that small general election thing.
Tiny one, yeah.
Little thing. They've come out with certainly talking about nationalising rail, also nationalised aspects of it. Do you think there's an opportunity there, if they do that, to be able to then take some of the stuff that you're finding and promoting, and actually use that mechanism to provide a level of standardization?
Hugely so, yes. I think the main issue we have in rail is the things that have already been built. So things like HS2, which are not built, they're very much, I mean, some of it's being built, but we're not running it. There is definitely an ability to completely adapt what we're doing and how we do it, so that we're catering to neuro-inclusion. But with the things that have already been built, London Underground, for example, you've got these very concrete barriers. You really can't get around it. The space is the space is the space. You can't expand much easily. You can't expand much better or much easier. But I do think having a nationalised rail would hopefully help that, and actually help more kind of blue skies thinking come in, and actually thinking about the passenger and what we're doing from a more holistic perspective. I do think there's a possibility, and I think the Labour government are much more interested in research, which would be fantastic. So if we can try and bolster as much as we can with what they want to do, we're all ears. Yeah, we'd be very, very happy to contribute in any way we can.
Of course, all the new rail ministers will be listening to this podcast, and therefore, hopefully, they'll take that message on board.
Oh, hello.
Great to have you on board.
I'll give you my email. That's fine.
We're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to get into the final three questions.
It's to the final three. My name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace. And keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreen.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome,
And me, Barry Kirby.
every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
It depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final three.
Might need to update that advert because that whole every Friday thing, yeah, it's been a bit.
So many trains in there, you know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, we'll have to play with that. You'll have to come on with me and Nick and talk about trains because we haven't done it.
That would be wicked. I'd love to.
Especially Nick is a massive transporter buff for this sort of thing.
That'd be great. That'd be really good.
So in the final three is for the same three questions we ask everybody who comes on board, just to get a bit more insight into yourself, really. So, do you have a book or a paper that you basically is like a Bible to you that you need to go back to time and time again? It could be technical or it could be a fiction book, the one that is the go-to relaxing book.
I do. I'm literally loading that on my Kindle now so I can show you. So there's a couple that I really, really like in terms of neurodiversity and neuroinclusion. The first is, oh, blimey, that's not loaded very well. I love the internet. When everything works, it's fantastic. When it doesn't, it's a pain in the backside. So it is called The Power of Neurodiversity by Thomas Armstrong. And what I really, really like about his book is it goes into understanding neurodiversity from a completely different perspective. So it kind of looks at the powers and the advantages of being neurodiverse, where that takes you in today, and actually how we've evolved, that neurodiversity is a fantastic thing. You know, somebody who may have been autistic when we were cavemen may have actually been really, really good at remembering and documenting bits and pieces that were, could kill us, or we're actually doing. And somebody who may be ADHD may have been really good at multitasking and pulling everything together. So it kind of goes into these really, really interesting, in-depth analogies of what it's like and the bonuses of being neurodiverse. My book I'm reading at the moment is How to Not Fit In, or How Not to Fit In, sorry. And that's an incredibly good book about two neurodiverse women who were late diagnosed, to talk about the horrors of going to university, not diagnosed. One of them failed their degree, but actually how they've scraped back, and they've got their own consultancy now that looks at how you be autistic and ADHD in a society that doesn't accommodate that. And I love it. It's full of facts. It's full of really interesting information, and it's some really, really sad pieces of sort of biographies of people and what they've gone through and how they've got there. But for me, it's a really nice narrative of actually this is the real truth of what it's like to be neurodiverse. It's really difficult. It's hard work. Lots of things that they realized that made them neurodiverse were the reasons that they failed, and some of the things that they did. It's not to say that they're failing, it's that the society around them is not able to do anything. There's lots. And there's also, I think if you're new to neurodiversity, Judy Singer is the original founder of the neurodiversity movement, and her dissertation, or rather I think it's her thesis, is incredibly interesting. It's back from I think the 1970s, but perhaps later, I'm not sure. Really, really good, really in depth. It goes through everything about what neurodiversity is and the whole movement and what it is and what it's not as well, which is a good first book to read if you're sort of new into neurodiversity.
Cool. Well, there's a reading list to keep us going through.
Sorry.
No, but it's great because again, it's this idea that we can push people towards things that you can read and have that reflection piece. Yeah. I think so. That's why I think the TikTok algorithm in this case, or your reel or Instagram Reels algorithm, whatever, can actually be quite good, because if you're starting to reflect on pieces that go, actually, that's me, and it starts pushing more your way, and then you can become more reflective. That's the first time I've been positively promoting the TikTok algorithm. So if you could go back in time to a time that suits you as your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh. There's so many pieces of advice. I was told once by a school teacher that I'd never be an engineer. And it really, really, really made my confidence suffer. If I could go back in time and tell young Kimberley don't listen. You're going to become a chartered ergonomist. You're going to get a bachelor's and a master's degree. You're going to be able to do loads of cool things and travel the world because you teach everything. I would tell her to stay focused, to be as creative as you can possibly be. I used to, as a very young kid, ask about 100 questions before I'd have my breakfast every day. Really stupid things like, why don't the clouds come in through the ceiling when we open the windows, or things like that. Really, really odd things. And my dad, I've spoken about him a lot now, but my dad used to find answers to it. And I love that. And I think keeping creative, keeping open-minded, and also just following what you want to do. I'd sit her down and say that people are going to say some things, people are going to do some stuff, just prove them wrong. You can do it, and just prove everybody that you can do it.
There is an element of that, isn't there, with especially where you get advice from teachers who sort of say, no, you can't do what it is that you want to achieve, or you'll never amount to anything, and stuff like that. Yeah, I can sort of relate to that.
I was told once that I'd be lucky if McDonald's would hire me. I was incredibly ill-fitted to the workplace, and it's a really hard thing to hear as a young child. You want to be the really cool kid who does, is an astronaut or whatever. To have your confidence knocked so young is really not cool. Sorry, go on.
So some people would suggest that maybe they were doing that to give you the inspiration to prove them wrong. I think it's charitable.
I think for me, it came across as I did want to prove them wrong. I wanted to become more qualified than the person who told me I couldn't be qualified. and I did. And they'll never know because I don't follow them, or they have no. But for me, it's a small win. It's like, I proved my point. Now I want to continue and get world domination and all that sort of stuff and come later. But for me, for now, it's building up my confidence from when I was 8 and told, no, you're a girl. You can't do it. You can't be an engineer. So.
Okay. So fast forward many years to you decide to retire. What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, so many things.
World domination.
World domination. No, several things. I think the first that's not human factors related at all is my animal stuff. I do a lot of stuff at rescue centres. I'm a very pro-vegan. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a vegan. And I do a lot of stuff for rescue centres. I've built using my engineering degree to build pens and things for rescue animals and shelters and things like that. So that would be really nice. But academically, and also in the space of human factors, I really want to be remembered as somebody who was at least pushing, at the very least, pushing for inclusion and arguing back as to, well, this isn't inclusive, or this needs to be better, and this is why. And whether that gets to somewhere or not, at least being remembered as somebody who was really trying to be pushy and not pushy, don't remember being pushy, somebody who is motivated and is striving for true inclusion, whether that's in an academic sense, in industry, wherever. That would be really cool, just to be somebody who went, oh yeah, a bit like Judy Singer, how she's remembered for her neurodiversity movement. If I can be remembered for somebody who's pushing for true inclusion, that would be really cool.
Awesome. Kimberley, thank you ever so much for taking the time to deal with that. For what you hopefully won't see in the edit at the end of this is we've been battling with the with the Microsoft issues.
Oh yeah, sorry, I cut out like 8 times.
But by the wonders of modern technology, those of you watching and listening won't see any of that. If people want to get in touch with you and talk more about either neurodiversity, rail, or just things in a broader sense, how would they get in touch with you?
Email or LinkedIn or through Barry. I might use you as my platform to get through to, but yeah, or if you access the university, the Birmingham Centre for Railway Research and Education, and ask for me, I'd be more than happy to help, or just have a chat about anything. I love a good chat.
Awesome. And all the details, Kimberley's details, will be in the show description of this episode. So Thank you again, Kimberley. Really, really appreciate having you on. And thank you all for listening and for watching. If you do have any questions or comments on what you've heard, maybe you've got some thoughts about neurodiversity, about maybe your own experiences or experiences of others, do like, comment, share wherever you're getting this episode. We'll do our best to stay on top of it, respond, and maybe bring in some of the comments into a future episode. But as for now, we'll say thank you all for listening and engaging, no matter what platform you're doing it on, and we shall see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.